Evidence of intelligent life on Mars, flowing rivers, active volcanoes, man-made structures, and NASA back at it again with photoshopping images and destroying data. It's all here, let's check it out. While it might not seem like it today, Mars used to have a pretty hospitable atmosphere. Furthermore, it wasn't always the red planet. In fact, at one point it was actually pretty blue. Yes, current Mars is cold and inhospitable, but dry riverbeds and minerals that form only when liquid water is present indicate that once, long ago, Mars had an atmosphere capable of retaining enough heat to support oceans and maybe even life. But just how Earth-like was Mars? Well, isn't that the question we are all just dying to know the answer to? Furthermore, how did it become the barren desert we all know and are so incredibly intrigued by today? Up until around 4 billion years ago, Mars had a strong magnetic field, much like Earth, that contributed to its dense atmosphere that works like a greenhouse to trap the sun's light. While this is not a definitive fact, scientists believe this to be true because of modern-day observations of convection currents of molten metals located in the planet's core. As the planet's core began to cool, however, the magnetic field began to weaken, eventually to the point where Mars could no longer trap heat or protect itself from solar winds, streams of energetic charged particles flowing from the sun that have extremely high levels of radiation. In just a few 100 million years, these solar winds would have stripped away the majority of Mars's atmosphere, likely killing anything that had once lived there. While a few 100 million years might not sound fast, in the scheme of things it was actually incredibly quick. And the reason it took such a short amount of time was because, in its youth, the sun rotated much faster than it does now. And as a result, hundreds of millions of years ago, its solar winds were also much more energetic and therefore destructive. So, in the cosmic blink of an eye, Mars went from warm, wet, and presumably hospitable to a cold, frozen, barren wasteland. But what was life on the planet like before all of that? Peaceful or a hotbed for natural disasters? I'll give you a hint, nothing is ever easy. A recent study conducted by NASA's Curiosity and Perseverance rovers has revealed that Mars, circa a couple 100 billion years ago, likely had a large amount of tectonic and volcanic activity. 63 new examples of various volcanoes located in a strange region of Mars with anomalous properties that set the region apart from the rest of the planet is ultimately what led scientists to this conclusion. The region, known as the Iridinia region of Mars, is located in the planet's southern hemisphere. This region appears to have been shaped by activity within Mars's crust, aka volcanic activity. This is a huge step forward in understanding where to look for signs of ancient life on the red planet because, as was stated by Astor Cowart, a team member and planetary geologist at the Planetary Science Institute, the large basins in this region once hosted a lake system known as the Iridinia Paleo Lake, which was up to around a mile deep when the lake was at its greatest extent, and long-lived volcanic sources next to abundant water may very well have fueled hydrothermal systems that could have nurtured life. Exciting stuff. With all that being said, it's really no surprise that many scientists believe that ancient bacteria might just be hiding directly underneath the surface of Mars, where it would have been kept safe from harsh radiation for the past millions of years. Exciting. According to an article written in October of 2022 by Ashley Strickland of CNN, quote, "While no evidence of life has been found on the red planet, researchers did simulate conditions on Mars in a lab to see how bacteria and fungi could survive. The scientists were surprised to discover that bacteria could likely survive for 280 million years if it was buried and protected from the ionizing radiation and solar particles that bombard the Martian surface today." End quote. The simple fact of knowing that bacteria could have survived on Mars, combined with the idea that Mars once held conditions that very well could have created and supported life, makes me pretty optimistic that one day, hopefully in the near future, we will find proof of what we've all been looking for. And we're already halfway there. In 2013, SAM, short for Sample Analysis at Mars, a suite of instruments on board NASA's Mars Science Laboratory rover, discovered organic compounds inside of sedimentary rock on Mars, as well as boron, which is a metalloid, which is an amazing discovery because the compounds discovered are precursors for prebiotic chemistry, which, alongside the discovery of liquid water having once existed on Mars, strongly points to the possibility of life having been present on the red planet at one point in history or becoming present within the next few million years or so as well. Furthermore, in 2018, NASA announced the detection of seasonal variations in methane levels found on Mars, which could be produced by microorganisms. The whole thing is super exciting and incredibly cool. Alright, now that we've covered the science behind life possibly having existed on Mars, let's talk about some of the less scientifically backed evidence showing signs of advanced civilizations having once existed on Mars so many millions of years ago. For starters, there is the famous and highly controversial image of the Mars face, located in a region of Mars known as the City. While NASA has claimed the perception of the face to be nothing more than pareidolia, a phenomenon in which humans perceive a specific, often meaningful image in random or ambiguous visual patterns, there are many people who just aren't buying it. Myself included. In fact, many experts, including Errol Turin, a professional satellite imaging specialist on differentiating natural versus man-made structures, have stated that there is no possible way the face could have formed naturally on the surface of Mars. It's just too perfect, too symmetrical, and too intentional. Furthermore, the famous face is not the only depiction of a face on Mars. In fact, many other photos from the Mars rover show what appear to be many other stone carvings with humanoid features. Now, I am well aware that this line of thought does begin to enter into the conspiracy theory realm, or it's already deep into the conspiracy theory realm, but there really are just too many uncanny formations on the surface of Mars for us not to be at least a little bit curious as to whether or not our mind is just really good at making faces where there aren't any, or if ancient Martians were just really good at carving faces that could last a couple 100 billion years.
Now, it may not sound like it, but this kind of audio wouldn't be possible on Earth the same way. The recording helped them learn about the structure of these dust devils, how wide they are, how fast they spin, and how powerful they can be. Out on the cold, quiet surface of Mars, NASA's InSight lander heard something weird. A series of little popping and pinging sounds, what scientists started calling dinks and donks. These weren't earthquakes or weather, they were noises coming from inside the lander itself, picked up by the incredibly sensitive seismometer it brought to Mars. The SEIS instrument was designed to detect the faintest ground movements, from Marsquakes to meteorite impacts, but it ended up picking up something else entirely. Late at night, when the Martian winds died down and everything went still, it would record tiny creaks, pops, and pings, odd little sounds that repeated regularly. Take a listen. Turns out these noises were being caused by parts inside the seismometer slightly expanding and contracting as the temperature dropped. See, on Mars, the temperature swing from day to night is massive, up to 76 degrees Celsius. So metal parts flex and shift and rub against each other. That friction is what causes those dinks and donks. NASA scientists were surprised at just how clearly they could hear this. Baptiste Scheid, a scientist at Los Alamos National Laboratory, said, "We had never heard anything like this on Mars before. These sounds are kind of like the instrument talking to us, telling us what's happening inside." Another scientist on the project, Philippe Logane, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, I'm probably not, I'm sorry. Well, he compared it to the crackling you hear when a cooling car engine starts settling after it's turned off. These dinks and donks are like a Martian symphony of thermal stress, he said. But it wasn't just mechanical noise. What makes this so important is that the microphone and sensors were sensitive enough to capture both the inner workings of the lander and those subtle shifts in air pressure and movement on the surface of the planet. For the first time, researchers were able to record how the Martian atmosphere behaves at very small scales. Changes in turbulence, sudden gusts, and little pressure dips that had never been observed directly before. The SuperCam microphone on NASA's Perseverance rover also picked up similar odd sounds, like the snapping of its rock-zapping laser, the mechanical clicks of instruments, and the whir of Ingenuity's helicopter blades. That data was part of a study published in Nature, which helped scientists understand how sound behaves on Mars. As Sylvester Maurice, lead author of the study, put it, "At some point we thought the microphone was broken. It was so quiet." So that's how still and silent Mars can be. For the first time in history, one spacecraft on another planet recorded the sound of a completely different spacecraft in action. That happened on April 30th of 2021 when NASA's Perseverance rover captured audio of the Ingenuity helicopter flying on Mars. The SuperCam microphone on Perseverance was parked about 262 feet or about 80 meters away, so scientists weren't even sure they'd hear anything at all. You can actually hear the faint hum of Ingenuity's rotors layered over the wind. Now, the rumbling sound you're going to hear is the wind, but that droning hum, that's the helicopter blades. To make that humming easier to hear, scientists had to isolate it. They zoomed in on the blade frequency and stripped away sounds above 90 Hz and below 80, then they boosted the remaining frequencies. It's not studio quality audio, but it's enough to hear the soft buzzing of the helicopter's blades. Now, this was actually a huge moment, not just for the novelty of hearing it, but for science. According to David Mamone, a member of the SuperCam microphone team, this is a very good surprise. We had carried out tests and simulations that told us the microphone would hardly pick up the sounds of the helicopter, since the Mars atmosphere dampens sound propagation strongly. End quote. So the fact that they could hear Ingenuity shows just how useful microphones could be on future missions, not only for studying machines, but also understanding how sound behaves on alien worlds. On Earth, we take sound for granted, but on Mars, it's a whole other game. NASA's InSight lander wasn't just built to snap pictures. Its main job was to sit still and listen. InSight's most important tool was a seismometer placed right on the Martian surface to detect Mars quakes, and it worked. InSight detected hundreds of Mars quakes, some strong enough to give scientists detailed data about Mars's internal layers, but it also picked up other weirder signals. On March 6th of 2019, InSight's seismometer recorded this mix of signals that included wind gusts and the robotic arms snapping pictures. One NASA scientist described the experience of hearing the data like this. It's like listening to the planet breathe or whisper. Another compared it to a musical instrument being plucked and pinged by temperature and wind. Every creak, gust, and vibration recorded by InSight helps paint a clearer picture of what it's really like on Mars. Not just its surface, but its atmosphere, its crust, and everything shifting under it. Even when the planet seems silent, InSight showed us it's always making noise. Alright, so this is really cool. NASA posted a video comparing what things sound like on Earth versus what they'd sound like on Mars. And let's just say Mars sounds a lot less appealing than it does in movies. This is what a bicycle bell sounds like here at home. And here's what that same bell would sound like on Mars. So the sound is all muffled, it almost gets drowned out by that deep rumbling ambience. So what about ocean waves? Well, here's what they sound like on Earth. Just lovely, isn't it? But here's what ocean waves would sound like if they existed on the red planet. And yeah, not quite as nice. It sounds like an explosive, like it's just gone off in my ear, and I'm just slowly descending into hell. Just all the familiar sounds are slowly being drowned out. Not long after it landed in February of 2021, NASA's Perseverance rover turned on its microphone and captured something pretty haunting: Martian wind. The rover was parked in a crater called Jezero, and for the first time in history, we could actually hear what wind sounds like on another planet. And that's just cool. Having visuals of Mars along with sound now just makes it a lot more immersive, like we're getting closer and closer to it. It also sounds kind of eerie because it's not like the wind you'd hear on Earth. Because Mars has a super thin atmosphere, about 1% the density of ours, the wind there doesn't howl or whistle. Instead, it produces this low, ghostly rumble. The thin air can't carry sound very well, so everything comes across quieter and more muffled. These first wind recordings really got to show just how alien Mars really is. Scientists use this audio not just to give us a sense of atmosphere, literally, but to study how sound moves through the Martian air. It was also an important test of the microphone itself, proving it could survive the landing and handle Mars's tough conditions. Back in 2019, something happened on Mars that had never been captured before: the sound of a Mars quake. It was picked up by NASA's InSight lander, which was designed specifically to listen for this kind of seismic activity. On April 6, 2019, InSight recorded vibrations from beneath the surface of the red planet. Take a listen, this is some pretty spooky audio. Yeah, yikes, that just sounds haunting, doesn't it? Such a lonely, eerie noise. It's kind of ghostly. And the fact that it's way out in space, so far from the creature comforts of home, it just, I don't know, it adds to it. So Mars isn't like Earth when it comes to seismic activity. There are no tectonic plates shifting around. Instead, these quakes happen when the crust contracts or cracks from the planet cooling over time. The sounds of these Mars quakes were made audible thanks to InSight's highly sensitive seismometer, called SEIS, which is short for Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure. The recording contains 3 types of sounds: the Martian wind blowing across the lander, the actual Mars quake, and some mechanical noise from InSight's robotic arm as it moves to take some pictures. Here's a bit of that audio, because that sounds really weird. Each sound came from different sensors, one set designed to pick up deep, low-frequency vibrations, another tuned to higher frequencies. These were originally outside the range of human hearing, so the audio had to be sped up 60 times the normal rate just so we could actually hear it. The quake InSight picked up that day was small, but it was clear, and more importantly, it was the first one scientists could confidently say came from inside Mars. It also helped confirm that Mars is still geologically active, at least a little bit. Since then, InSight has recorded hundreds more, but this one is still the cleanest. On September 27, 2021, Perseverance caught something even more intense: a dust devil passing directly over it. Take a listen to this. Now, what exactly is a dust devil? Because it sounds really ominous. Well, dust devils are small tornado-like whirlwinds, and this one gave the rover a full blast. As the mini tornado moved overhead, Perseverance's microphone picked up the rapid-fire patter of dust particles slamming into it. It sounded like a fast, rattling burst, like sand hitting a metal surface in a storm. The event lasted only about 10 seconds, but it gave scientists a rare up-close listen to Martian weather in action. You can clearly hear the wind pick up, the impacts of flying grit, and then a quick fade as the dust devil spins away.
Next up, we have the discovery of Mars's 4 seasons, and I'm not talking about the hotel. 4 very uneven seasons, that is, the length of which change depending on where you're located on the red planet. Alright, let's break it down. 1 year on Mars is made up of 668.59 Martian solar days, which equal about 687 Earth days. Basically, making it through 1 year on Mars is the same as making it through almost 2 on Earth. In the northern hemisphere of the planet Mars, spring lasts for 7 Earth months, summer for 6, fall for 5.3, and winter for just over 4. Of course, even with it being summer, the northern hemisphere of Mars never really reaches temperatures exceeding -20 degrees Celsius. In the southern hemisphere, however, things are a bit different. Summers are hot and quick, while winters are drawn out and cold. Extremely cold. The extreme contrast between the 2 hemispheres is what causes those massive dust storms you see on Mars. Not necessarily terrifying, but probably pretty scary to witness up close and be a part of. And also, we need to know this stuff if we're planning on moving there someday.
Scientists have been trying to figure out why there are methane spikes on Mars. Methane is a gas that on Earth is mostly produced by living organisms like plants, animals, and microbes. It can also come from geological processes like the interaction of water with certain types of rock. So finding methane on Mars raises a big question. Is it being made by some form of life, or is it just a chemical reaction happening underground? NASA's Curiosity rover first detected methane spikes back in 2013. The methane levels increased in a short period before dropping back down. This was really surprising because methane doesn't last long in Mars's thin atmosphere. Sunlight and chemical reactions break it down within a few hundred years, so whatever is producing this methane has to be active right now. One theory is that the methane is being released from underground reservoirs. These could be pockets of methane trapped in ice, releasing the gas during warmer seasons, or it could be getting released because of underground activity. There could also be microbes like the ones that live in extreme environments here on Earth, but we still don't have a definitive answer. And that's pretty cool.
Next up, we have a discovery made in 2015 that has caused NASA scientists to question everything. Okay, well, not everything, but definitely some stuff. You see, while exploring the desert-like surface of Mars, the Curiosity rover just so happened to stumble upon Maria's Pass, a geological contact zone where two different rocks make contact. In this case, a layer of sandstone sits atop a bed of mudstone. In the area, there is also a large concentration of silica, which is quite common on Earth as it's found in rocks and minerals, primarily quartz, as well as glass, sand, silicone, and granite. What's interesting, however, is the fact that in order for such a large concentration of silica to occur, water must be present, and so uncovering this pass filled with a high concentration of silica is a major step in understanding what Mars would have looked like at a time when its waters were free-flowing. And then of course there's a matter of tridymite, which was also discovered on the pass. Like silica, tridymite does exist on Earth, but unlike silica, tridymite is incredibly rare. Unlike Earth, however, Mars has an abundance of this mineral, leading scientists to wonder why and how. And also, look at this thing, it's so cool.
The soil on Mars is toxic. It's not all bad though. Mars' soil contains perchlorate salts, chemicals that are really good at absorbing water, and they've been found all over the Martian surface. Scientists first discovered them thanks to the Phoenix Mars lander in 2008. These salts can lower the freezing point of water. This means that even in the super cold temperatures on Mars, perchlorates could help keep water in a liquid state. So finding these salts means there might be briny water just below the surface, which also means there's a chance there could be life on the red planet. But perchlorates are also toxic to most forms of life. On Earth, they can disrupt thyroid function in humans and are harmful to a lot of plants and animals. Who knows what kind of life could exist up there that could handle the stuff though. Plus, another interesting aspect of these salts is that they release oxygen when heated. This could be incredibly useful for future manned missions to Mars. We could have a way of generating oxygen for breathing and fuel.
Next up, volcanoes. Ancient volcanoes that once existed proudly on Mars in all of their active glory, but that are now buried deep beneath the surface of the planet. Not only that, but it is believed that these newly discovered volcanoes once erupted from underneath the surface of the ice. When this happened, it was not uncommon for the eruption to punch a hole clear through the ice layer, concealing the volcano, and deposit large amounts of ash into the air, leaving behind a distinct trail of minerals and other compounds. Minerals like tridymite, which support science's theory as its large quantities on Mars point to heavy volcanic history in Mars. Imagine owning a crystal that formed as the result of a volcanic eruption on Mars. I feel like that's when you know you've truly made it. Either that or that's when you know that we screwed up our own planet so bad that we had to evacuate and now we're just surrounded by the crystal because we live on Mars. Like I said, either or.
In 2012, all these strange cloud-like plumes were spotted by amateur astronomers shooting up from the surface. So what is going on here? Scientists have a few theories, but none of them are 100% definitive. One is that these plumes could be related to some sort of volcanic activity, even though Mars's known volcanoes are believed to be now inactive. Another possibility is that they're caused by solar wind interacting with the Martian atmosphere, creating this kind of aurora-like phenomenon. But these plumes are incredibly high, much higher than what we'd expect from interactions like that. The plumes could also be related to dust storms. Mars is famous for its dust storms, some of which can envelop the entire planet. These storms could potentially be kicking up dust high into the atmosphere, creating the plume-like formations. But again, the altitude of the plumes is much higher than what we'd see with typical dust storms.
Alright you guys, this last one isn't so much of a discovery made by the Mars rover as it is a theory put forth by all of you. Well, not all of you, but some of you for sure. Anyways, it goes like this. Is it at all possible, given the nature of Mars's past, flowing oceans, four seasons, volcanoes, gravity, and familiar minerals and compounds, that at one point we already lived there? I mean, think about it. Maybe at one point humans inhabited Mars, but then we messed it up so bad that we had to come to Earth. And then the asteroid hit that killed the dinosaurs, we get sent back to the Dark Ages, and now here we are trying to do it all over again, only opposite. I mean, based off of our research, Mars was clearly more inhabitable back then than it is now. And you can also apparently grow crops on Mars. So while the theory is out there, so is Mars, and maybe so were we at one point. you never know, you know?
So what color is Mars? Well, everything is, brownish, orangish, kind of gray, right? Well, that's what we thought until very recently when a bright white rock was spotted on the red planet. NASA's Perseverance rover recently made a pretty intriguing discovery on Mars, a 14-inch high boulder dubbed Ataco Point. Ataco Point stands out not only because of its size, but also, just look at it. It measures 18 inches wide and has a light toned surface speckled with minerals identified as pyroxene and feldspar. It has an unusual size, shape, and arrangement of mineral grains and crystals. It's unlike any of the rocks that surround it. Scientists are debating the origins of Ataco Point. Some think it may have formed outside the area it's sitting in and was transported there by ancient water flows, but of course, we're all kind of hoping the rock just isn't even from Mars originally. As to who brought it there, that's the fun part.
Next up, we have Morse code. Well, not actually Morse code, but also maybe. I'm talking about the Hagel Dune field, located below the North Pole of Mars, discovered in February of 2016. What's cool about these dunes is that they make no sense, unless of course someone or something created them. While the dashes, or lines, in the dunes are pretty standard, created by winds blowing against each other from opposite directions to create a rise in the loose earth, forming the dash dunes, the dots are incredibly peculiar because generally formations like this only appear when something or someone has interrupted the formation of the linear dunes, begging the question, what could have possibly interrupted the formation? The answer is certainly something to look forward to, although I've already got a pretty good guess. Also, if you do read Morse code and there is actually something written within these many dots and dash dunes, let me know what it says down below.
NASA is pretty excited about a hole that was recently discovered on Mars. Now, a hole may not sound all that exciting at first, but the thing is, who knows what could be down there? And potential caves on Mars would be a huge asset for future crewed missions. We could set up bases below ground. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured an image on August 15th of 2022. It was a small pit on the surface near the Arsia Mons volcano. The pit is just a few meters across, but we don't know how deep it is. There have been other pits spotted near Mars volcanoes, and these pits could be entrances to larger underground caverns. With Mars's thin atmosphere unable to shield against space radiation like Earth's, underground caverns would provide shelter for astronauts. And of course, there's the potential for life. On Earth, we have what are called karsts, which form when limestone dissolves, creating networks of caves and sinkholes underground. If Martian pits are anything like karsts, they could have been warm, sheltered places that supported life a long time ago.
Number 5, ghost. On this channel, we often look at blurry images that appear to show some kind of ghost or demon lurking in the background. But this one is a bit different than those because this one, of course, comes from Mars, so there's a bit more of a valid excuse for the image to not be of the best quality. This black and white image from the Mars rover appears to show another barren landscape of rocks and dust. Pretty typical for Mars, it honestly seems like kind of a boring place. But near the right corner of the image, you can see what appears to be the figure of a ghostly woman standing on top of one of the large rocks. To me, it looks like she's wearing a dress and, kind of standing with her arm like this or something, and she's got long dark hair. Others online said that the figure reminded them of a weeping angel creature from Doctor Who. No matter what you think, it's pretty creepy to look at and doesn't seem as easily explained away as any of the others. Number 4, space crab. In 2015, the Mars rover sent back this image of a rocky cliff on the surface of Mars, and like the last, it seems pretty ordinary at a first glance. But when you zoom in to the right side of the image, you can see what appears to be some sort of orange, horrific alien crab spider monster, and it honestly makes my skin itch just looking at it. People online were going crazy and asking NASA to send some sort of mission out to try and figure out what this creature is, because you can tell there's nothing else that even resembles it in the surrounding area or in other photos we've seen of the planet. One scientist brushed it off, saying that they see images like this about once a week. And all I have to say, are there really that many spider space crabs on Mars they see them once a week? Like the last one, NASA doesn't seem to offer up any sort of quick explanation, instead just saying, there's no crab, you're crazy. Well, NASA, you may be correct, but if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Number 3, dust devils. Alright, let's take a quick break from the crazy and talk about something that has been scientifically explained, but is still just a horrifying concept that I hope I never have to personally experience. This image of a Mars landscape taken in 2016 reveals what appears to be a long vertical column. This is actually known as a Martian dust devil. These occur on Earth as well, but they're usually pretty short-lived and harmless. They're caused when the wind creates what is basically a small little tornado of dirt and sand, but the ones on Mars are a whole lot scarier. They're estimated to be able to grow to the size of about 10 times the size of an average Earth tornado and spin around at about 70 miles per hour, or 112 kilometers per hour for us Canadians. While the winds apparently wouldn't bother you that much, the sand hitting you in the face and tearing apart your spacesuit would be a pretty big issue. Oh, and also you'll probably be struck by a bunch of miniature lightning bolts too. Number 2, alien fungus. Alright, right back into the crazy. This image was taken by the Mars rover Opportunity in the year 2014, and just like most of the Mars photos we've seen, it's a bunch of rocks and dust. But wait, there's more. People noticed in the bottom left and middle of this image that there appears to be some sort of a more brightly colored object. It's dark red in the middle and white along the outside, which led people to start nicknaming it the Mars Jelly Donut. Theorists took to the internet to share their own opinions about what they believe the suddenly appearing formation to be. It is of course an alien fungus that somehow managed to grow on the surface of Mars. The truth of the situation that NASA shared is that it's apparently two pieces of a rock that the Mars rover drove over top of and managed to split in two. One of the pieces rolling down the hill to where it rests in the bottom left of the image. Number 1, Barack Obama. Ex-United States President Barack Obama is a Martian and actually lives on Mars? Of course. This panoramic image was taken from the summit of a place on Mars called Husband Hill and was snapped back in 2005 by NASA's Spirit rover. The picture was taken over the course of 3 days to provide, quote, a level of clarity that is unequaled in the history of Mars exploration. This high level of clarity allowed us to see the truth of what's hiding on Mars. People pointed out the fact that there was a rock that seemed to be in the exact shape of Barack Obama's head. At first glance, I really didn't see it, but once you look at it for longer, it really becomes uncanny. Obama has previously said in interviews that he would really like to see humans fly out and live on Mars, so here's my theory. He traveled back in time, taking a space rocket with him, went to Mars, became king of Mars where they built a statue of him, and years later NASA took a picture of the eroded statue in 2005, which I believe is definitely the easiest explanation. Number 10, alien doorway. So obviously we know that no people have actually landed on Mars and had a look around, at least that we know of. So the majority of this list is from things seen on Mars rover photos, and some of them aren't actually scary and are more like just hilarious or conspiratorial, but give me a break, I've had a long day, okay. The first image on this list comes from May of this year from the Curiosity rover. The image appears to show an entrance hidden into the side of some Martian rocks. Many people started theorizing that this could have been some sort of door to a hidden alien building underground. The perfect shaping of the hole led many people to believe that it must be something man-made or even alien-made. The naysayers decided that it was caused by a rock breaking off due to an earthquake, but what kind of rock would break off and just leave like a perfect hole like that? So I'm gonna go with aliens. Number 9, the hole. Speaking of holes, in 2017 the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter took a picture that revealed a massive unexplained hole on the surface of the red planet. The orbiter has been going around the planet for the past 16 years and sends photos of the planet back for NASA to analyze, and this one definitely caught them off guard. Mars is covered in various different holes and indentations, but this massive pit really stood out against the rest of the planet's landscape. In real size, the hole is hundreds of meters in diameter and appears to have ice at the bottom of it. The surrounding ground apparently covered in patches of frozen carbon dioxide. NASA really had no explanation for how this hole occurred, and they put a team together to try and work out what might have caused it. But don't worry NASA, you don't need a team, because I am a self-titled extraterrestrial professional, and I say that it's a pool that aliens use for alien Olympic swimming competitions. Number 8, Morse code. This same orbiter sent back another interesting picture of the surface the year before in 2016. This time, the surface seemed to be trying to send us a message. The marks on the ground appeared to form dashes and dots, which formed into a Morse code message. The long markings in the soil were on the inside of an impact crater in an area known as the Hagel Dune Field. Many people started theorizing that this could potentially be a massive sign that aliens live on Mars and are trying to communicate by what could effectively be compared to a massive SOS sign on a beach. I don't know when I decided I was going to make this video all about aliens, but there's really no going back now. So what are they trying to say to us? What message could be so important that they had to carve it into the side of a planet? Okay, it doesn't make much sense to us. This is clearly communication in a Martian language that we just don't know yet. Number 7. Martian face. In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft was circling around Mars and taking photos of the surface in an attempt to find a good spot to land for its sister ship, the Viking 2. During its journey, they managed to photograph what appears to be a massive Martian face sticking out of the side of the planet, almost 2 miles long from end to end. It's in a region of the planet that is called Cydonia, and until now I didn't even know that the regions on Mars had names. Scientists released the photo to the public a few days later, claiming that it was just a rock formation, saying, "A huge rock formation which resembles a human head, formed by shadows giving the illusion of eyes, nose, and mouth." But that's just what they want you to think. My degree in alienology tells me that this is actually a Martian equivalent of the Maui statues, clearly a recreation of the aliens that reside on the planet. Number 6. Floating spoon. In 2015, the Mars Curiosity rover picked up another interesting and potentially alien thing amidst the rocks and dust. On August 30th, 2015, on the rover's 1089th day on Mars, it photographed what appears to be a massive floating spoon, a large handle shape extending from the rocks and ending in what appears to resemble a curved end of a spoon. NASA, of course, wants us to think that this spoon formation was caused by the wind breaking away at the rocks and leaving this shape behind. But I am here to tell you that this is actually the remnants of a Martian kitchen. Me and the other people on obscure internet forums are looking forward to the day that we find the fork and knife to complete the full set. And maybe the massive unexplained Mars hole is actually just a big plate.
In 2014, an image taken by Curiosity went viral. Lying on the ground was a long white structure that looked uncannily like bone fragment. NASA immediately clarified that it was not bone. They said it was most likely a piece of rock eroded by wind, but independent analysts noted how it had a distinct shape resembling a femur or long bone, complete with curvature and ends that looked worn smooth. This image sparked a wave of speculation about fossilized remains on Mars. While the official explanation is still rock, even some scientists admitted it was an unusually shaped one. The photo remains part of the official NASA archive. In 2007, orbiters captured photos of dark circular pits scattered across the Martian surface near volcanic regions. At first glance, they looked like simple craters, but closer analysis revealed these pits were not impacts. These were vertical openings, like holes leading into the ground. Thermal scans showed they stayed warmer at night than the surrounding terrain, hinting that they might be entrances to underground caves or hollow spaces. NASA has listed these as priority exploration targets because caves could protect potential microbial life from radiation. But the real mystery is how deep they go and what might be inside. Some of these pits are hundreds of feet across and their floors are too dark for the orbiters to see. Some believe these could be remnants of ancient lava tubes. Others wonder if they hide something even stranger. In 2021, eagle-eyed viewers noticed something odd in a Perseverance camera feed. A small, fast-moving object shot across the sky in the background. It was visible in only a few frames, but it clearly wasn't a bird or cloud. NASA attributed it to a piece of debris or a dust particle close to the camera, but the trajectory didn't match falling debris. It moved in a smooth horizontal line, and its shape seemed disc-like. Because the rover's camera runs continuously, momentum moments like this are rare, but real. Even NASA engineers said they couldn't fully confirm what it was. It's still filed as an unidentified aerial anomaly. In 2012, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter imaged a circular stone formation in the middle of a flat plain. Dozens of boulder-sized rocks arranged themselves in a near-perfect ring, reminiscent of Earth's Stonehenge. Scientists believe that the stones may have been arranged by natural forces like ancient lava flows or erosion patterns, but the geometric precision of the formation is suspiciously organized. Some fringe researchers think it could be the remains of an ancient foundation or ritual site. Mainstream geologists don't support that theory, but they also can't fully explain why the boulders ended up in such an even shape. In 2016, scientists using orbital images noticed that sand dunes in certain regions of Mars were moving at a faster rate than they should in such a thin atmosphere. On Earth, high winds easily shape dunes, but Mars has much less atmospheric pressure, meaning strong winds are rare. Despite that, these dunes shifted significantly over just a few years. Some researchers believe microbursts or seasonal temperature spikes could be driving the movement, but there's also the possibility that underground gas release or other unknown processes are at play. This unexpected speed forced scientists to rethink their understanding of Martian wind systems. When Perseverance landed in Jezero crater, it stumbled upon evidence of an ancient river delta. Layers of sedimentary rock, curved channels, and branching formations proved that a massive flow of water once moved through the region. That's strange because Mars lost its thick atmosphere billions of years ago. The amount of water needed to carve such a delta suggests either the planet's history is different than we thought, or there were sudden, powerful bursts of water in more recent times. Some theories suggest underground aquifers released catastrophic floods. Others believe Mars may have experienced temporary warm periods, but either way, this delta hints that Mars was once far more Earth-like than anyone expected. Hidden heat signatures, strange shapes that seem almost too perfect, and signals coming from deep beneath the surface are forcing experts to rethink what they know. And what's creeping everyone out the most is how many of these discoveries can't be explained by normal science. At least, not yet. In 2018, the European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter picked up something shocking beneath the south polar ice cap of Mars. A radar scan revealed a patch of unusually warm material about 12 miles across. At first, researchers thought it might be liquid water, but temperatures at that depth are far too cold for water to stay unfrozen without some kind of heat source. And Mars doesn't have volcanic activity on that scale anymore. Some scientists suggested it might be salt water with antifreeze-like properties. Others proposed geothermal hotspots, but then multiple radar passes over the same area showed the signature hadn't moved or weakened at all, which is odd if it's just brine. This discovery hints that something below the surface is producing or retaining heat, and no one knows what it is. In 2022, the Perseverance rover captured a strange image in the Jezero crater. Right in the middle of a jagged, uneven field of stones was a perfectly smooth, round rock, about the size of a golf ball. Geologists know that spherical stones can form naturally over time through erosion, but the precision of this sphere was unlike anything else in the surrounding terrain. It was almost polished with no visible cracks. NASA scientists called it a concretion, a type of rock formed when minerals slowly build up around a core. But even they admitted it was unusually flawless. Some conspiracy-minded observers believed it may be evidence of past mechanical shaping or a manufactured object weathered over time. For now, it sits there like a tiny marble on an alien planet, raising more questions than answers. In 2021, Perseverance snapped a photo that caught scientists off guard. Buried in the dusty surface of Mars was what appeared to be a shiny metallic shard, jutting up from the soil at a sharp angle. NASA quickly explained it might just be a chunk of rock reflecting light, but the clean edges and reflective quality made it look more more like metal than stone. Some speculated it could be debris from a meteorite impact. Others wondered if it was old spacecraft material from a previous landing. It wasn't near any known landing sites, and it didn't match meteorite shapes usually found on Mars. The object hasn't been fully investigated yet, and until someone gets closer, its true nature remains a mystery. One of the weirdest Martian mysteries didn't come from a photo. It came from sound. In 2021, Perseverance used its onboard microphones to record high-pitched whistling noises carried through the thin Martian atmosphere. These weren't mechanical sounds from the rover itself. The audio team isolated them and confirmed they originated from the surrounding environment. Scientists first suspected dust devils or wind currents, but the sounds didn't match known wind frequencies. Some compared the tones to electrical discharges, which is odd because Mars isn't known for active lightning or strong electromagnetic activity. The recordings remain one of the most unsettling bits of data ever collected from another planet.
Now, this cropped image from the Mars Opportunity rover of a rock looks very similar to a Neo-Assyrian attendant god statue that's currently being housed at the British Museum. The resemblance is pretty uncanny, and it only added to all the conspiracies about aliens visiting Earth in ancient times, possibly bringing back souvenirs. Some even wonder if these sculptures were inspired by alien visitors. But much like the mysterious doorway, could our brains just be seeing patterns that aren't really there? In 2022, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter found something that got people's attention: a hole on the Martian surface near a volcano. Now, at first, a hole might not sound like a big deal, but this one could be critical for future human missions. This hole is just a few meters across, but scientists aren't sure how deep it goes. The real excitement comes from the possibility that the hole might be connected to a larger underground cavern, or caverns, which could be useful for astronauts hopefully living on Mars in the future, fingers crossed. Planet's thin atmosphere doesn't provide the kind of radiation shielding that Earth's does, so having an underground base would make for a perfect refuge from the harmful space radiation. Even more fascinating is the idea that these pits could have housed living beings already. On Earth, there are karsts, natural cave networks that form when limestone erodes. If Martian pits are similar, they could have offered a warm, protected environment that might have supported life long ago. It's easy to see why some people think that NASA is keeping more secrets than they're letting on when it comes to Mars. In January of 2014, the Opportunity rover came across something very strange: a rock that had mysteriously appeared in an area where it hadn't been before. This rock, about 4 centimeters wide, also had an odd shape and color that made it look almost like a jelly donut. The rock's outer layer was white, while the center was dark red. The fact that the rock seemed to come out of nowhere, too, became quite the story. Some people even took legal action against NASA at the time, apparently, demanding answers about this mysterious object. Well, NASA did come out, and they said that the rover had probably kicked up a rock during its movements, and the white outer layer was likely exposed when the rock flipped over, revealing a surface that hadn't been exposed to the Martian atmosphere for billions of years. But even with this explanation, the rock raises some interesting questions about how little we really know about the Martian environment. Who knows what other strange rocks there are to be found out there? In August of 2014, an image from NASA's Curiosity rover showed what appeared to be a human thigh bone on the Martian surface. This rock formation, about a foot long, looked almost exactly like a femur, complete with what seemed like a ball joint at one end. For a brief moment, conspiracy theorists had a field day with this, posting about how NASA had come across alien remains, but scientists, like they do, came along with a much less interesting explanation. They just explained that the rock wasn't a bone, but just a formation shaped by the powerful winds of Mars. Yes, this seemed to be a simple case of pareidolia, where the human brain just tends to recognize familiar shapes in random objects. Mars's wind erosion can sculpt rocks into shapes that look like things we may recognize from Earth. So, as cool as the idea of alien bones was, it turned out to be just another trick of nature. Most likely, anyway. So, what does all this weird stuff culminate in? Well, the theory about a massive alien base hidden beneath the surface of the red planet. Of course, the theory goes that NASA and other space agencies have known about it for years, but they've been covering it up to prevent a panic. Some say the base is buried deep under Mars's dusty surface, built by an ancient alien civilization that used to call the planet home. The reason they think it's hidden: certain anomalies spotted in photos sent back from rover missions, structures that don't look normal, like the monoliths we talked about about earlier. Some even point to areas where there are strange geometric patterns or long straight lines that seem to form unnatural shapes like tunnels or underground entrances, possibly. There's also talk of bizarre lights seen on Mars' surface in NASA's own images, which some claim are signs of energy sources or artificial illumination. The theory is that these bases are still operational and that alien life is quietly waiting beneath the surface. Of course, mainstream science doesn't acknowledge any of this, but so did NASA accidentally discover life on Mars almost 50 years ago, only to destroy it before realizing what they'd found? Well, that's the theory posed by Dirk Schultz-Makuch, an astrobiologist at the Technical University of Berlin. In a June 27th article for Big Think, Dirk talked about how the Viking landers may have accidentally came across tiny life forms while collecting samples of Martian rocks in 1976, but their experiments may have killed these life forms before they could be identified. The Viking 1 and Viking 2 landers carried out several experiments designed to detect signs of life. Now, while most of these experiments didn't show clear signs of life, a few results were rather interesting. See, a couple of their experiments hinted that some form of metabolism might be happening in the Martian soil. One test, which uses a tool called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, or GCMS, picked up traces of chemicals that shouldn't normally be on Mars, at least what they'd assume. Now, at first, scientists thought it was just contamination from cleaning products used on Earth, but later they realized those chemicals could naturally occur on Mars. There was also a big test designed to check if Mars had any living organisms, called the gas exchange experiment, but that one came back negative. That made most scientists think Mars had no life, but Dirk thinks they just messed up. He believes that the amount of water used in the tests could have killed off any microbes that were actually there, so the tests came back wrong. To put things in the bluntest and most simple wording possible, that is. But continuing with Schultz-Makuch's theory, back in 2008, the Phoenix rover, which was exploring the Martian North Pole, made an unexpected discovery while scooping up soil. It found evidence of perchlorate, a type of salt. Now, on Earth, ancient microorganisms use perchlorate as an energy source, so scientists got kind of excited, thinking it could be a sign of similar life on Mars. But here's the thing, it's a highly flammable substance. It's actually used on Earth to make a rocket fuel and fireworks burn faster. So if perchlorate was in the Martian soil, the theory went, Vikings' attempts to heat the soil might have set the perchlorate on fire, burning any organic material that might have been present. But if the substance really did incinerate any potential Martian life, there would likely be evidence of it left behind. When carbon burns with perchlorate, it produces chlorobenzene, a compound that contains carbon, hydrogen, and chlorine. Chlorobenzene can stick around in soil for months, and as it turns out, NASA's Curiosity rover did find traces of chlorobenzene in Martian soil during a 2013 mission. So researchers decided to go back and reanalyze Viking's original data, this time focusing specifically on chlorobenzene. Sure enough, they found trace amounts of the compound in samples taken by Viking 2. This means that the Viking mission might have indeed come across organic material, only to burn it up before they could study it. Melissa Guzman, a researcher from the Latmos Research Center in France, explained that while the evidence is compelling, though, it's not proof of Martian life, at least not definitively. The carbon compounds could have been contaminants from Earth, but some scientists, like Daniel Glavin from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, believe this new research could be the most important evidence pointing to organic molecules possibly existing on Mars. Now, in 1976, the Viking 1 orbiter captured a photo of what looked a lot like a humanoid face on Mars. This eerie formation, found in the Cydonia region, was about 2 kilometers long, and from a specific angle, the rock structure looked a hell of a lot like a human face, an especially creepy human face. You could see what looked like eyes, a nose, and mouth. This strange appearance led some to think it was a relic from some ancient Martian civilization, maybe even a monument built by extraterrestrials. The timing couldn't have been better for conspiracy theorists who jumped on that idea that NASA was hiding proof of intelligent life on Mars. But when the Mars Global Surveyor took higher resolution images in 2001, followed by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's detailed shots in 2007, the face turned out to be nothing more than a natural rock formation. The new pictures showed a rugged, uneven hill with no facial features to be found, but the original image is absolutely iconic, especially among UFO enthusiasts who still argue that NASA is covering something up. Some think NASA intentionally downplays some of the stranger things they come across, in this case that Mars could have been home to some advanced civilization. In May of 2022, the Curiosity rover snapped a picture of what appeared to be this perfectly cut out doorway in some Martian rocks. The rectangular shape, about a foot tall, seemed like a deliberate opening, but no one's ever set foot on Mars, at least no one from Earth. So just what is this thing? Could it have been made by an ancient Martian civilization? The idea that Mars could have once been inhabited by intelligent beings who built doorways definitely caught a lot of people's attention, but scientists quickly offered a more grounded explanation. They pointed out that this so-called doorway was probably just the result of a natural process called differential erosion, where softer rock wears away faster than the harder rock around it. Over millions of years, this process can create openings in the surface. Experts also explain that Mars experiences seismic activity, or Marsquakes, which could have helped form this specific shape. Now, a couple of strange rectangular shapes have popped up on Mars, igniting all kinds of rumors and conspiracy theories. The first was spotted by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it's a mysterious object that looks like a massive rectangular boulder. The high-resolution, high-rise camera captured this from about 180 miles above the surface, showing details so sharp that it makes you wonder if this is just a rock or something more. Then there's the Phobos monolith found on Mars' moon, Phobos. This huge rock, about 295 feet tall, was discovered by amateur astronomer Efren Palermo, who was analyzing Martian images. The size and shape of the monolith make it pretty hard to ignore. It's even appeared in fiction, like in Alistair Reynolds' 2012 novel Blue Remembered Earth, where it's said to have been carved by astronauts into the shape of a wrecked spaceship. So, are these monoliths giant space markers left by some ancient alien race, or are they just oddly shaped rocks on Mars and its moon? In 2013, one of Curiosity's photographs from the Martian surface went viral. The picture appeared to show a small rodent-shaped figure nestled among the rocks. Its body, head, and even tail seemed distinct. NASA dismissed it as pareidolia, the human tendency to see familiar shapes in random objects. But the Mars rat image sparked debate. Some researchers argued that if there really was small wildlife on Mars, NASA would not admit it without absolute proof. While the official explanation is that it's simply a rock shaped like an animal, NASA didn't provide follow-up analysis on the specific location. Instead, it was quickly buried under new photo releases. The unsettling possibility that Mars may have tiny life forms was left unexplored. In January of 2014, the Opportunity rover took photos of a patch of ground. Days later, the same spot appeared to have a new rock sitting on it that was not there before. NASA scientists nicknamed it Pinnacle Island. The rock looked white on the inside, as if it had been cracked open. NASA explained that the rover likely knocked the rock loose with its wheels, but the location of the rock made that explanation a bit questionable. Some researchers suggested it could have emerged from underground or been deposited by some unknown process. Instead of investigating, though, NASA shifted attention, insisting it was nothing unusual. The mystery of the appearing rock was left unresolved, quietly filed away as rover debris. Physicist John Brandenburg once presented a disturbing theory. Data from Mars orbiters revealed unusually high concentrations of xenon-129 in the atmosphere. Now, on Earth, this isotope is strongly associated with nuclear explosions. Brandenburg argued that Mars may have experienced massive nuclear blasts in its ancient past, possibly wiping out life. NASA and other scientists dismissed his claims, saying the xenon could have natural explanations, but the fact remains that the unusual isotope ratios are real and still unexplained. NASA avoids discussing this in detail, preferring to focus on safer topics like ancient lakes. Whether or not the nuclear theory is correct, the reluctance to fully address the data makes this one of the most disturbing Mars mysteries kept quiet. Images from orbiters have revealed long, tube-like structures on the Martian surface. Some appear as collapsed tunnels or translucent ridges that stretch for miles. Officially, NASA calls them lava tubes, natural formations from ancient volcanic activity, but some of these tubes look unusually smooth and evenly shaped. A few even appear to be partially intact domes. Scientists have noted that lava tubes could be excellent shelters for microbial life, protecting it from radiation. Despite this though, NASA rarely highlights these structures in public releases. Instead, they're brushed aside as geological oddities, leaving the public largely unaware of how strange and artificial looking some of them appear. Over the years, multiple rover photos have shown objects that look like fossils. Some appear similar to coral, shells, or segmented organisms. NASA consistently labels them as rocks eroded into strange shapes, yet the similarities to biological forms are striking. In 2019, one particular Curiosity image caught attention. It looked like a small fossilized sea creature embedded in stone. NASA quickly said it was just a rock that had been shaped by wind. The story ended there without further public analysis. A lot of researchers believe these fossil-like forms deserve serious study, but the official response has been silence. And for now, the possibility that Mars once hosted complex life remains one of the most disturbing discoveries consistently downplayed. In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 orbiter snapped one of the most famous space photos ever taken. At first glance, the image looked like a massive human face staring up from the Martian surface in the Cydonia region. The structure appeared to have eyes, a nose, a mouth. NASA later dismissed it as a trick of shadows and poor image resolution, but here's where it gets a little strange. Later, higher resolution images taken in the 90s and early 2000s did show that the face was a natural mesa. Yet even in these images, the formation retained a strangely symmetrical look, just not common in nature. Some researchers argue that the quick dismissal of the face on Mars was a little too convenient. Instead of openly investigating, NASA shifted attention away, branding it an optical illusion. To this day, the face on Mars remains a symbol of how easily disturbing or inconvenient discoveries can be downplayed. One of the most controversial discoveries ever made on Mars is methane. In 2003, scientists using Earth-based telescopes detected massive plumes of methane gas on Mars. Then in 2013, NASA's Curiosity rover confirmed it. Here's why that matters. Methane is unstable on Mars and should be destroyed quickly by sunlight and chemical reactions. If it is there, something must be producing it right now. On Earth, most methane is created by microbes or geological activity. NASA originally downplayed the finding, calling it an impossible contamination, but in 2019, Curiosity detected the largest spike ever recorded, 10 times higher than normal. Instead of celebrating the possibility of life, or at least a groundbreaking discovery though, NASA quietly shifted focus to other data, often releasing statements that the methane might just be seasonal or misunderstood. Yet methane on Mars is still unexplained, and the possibility that it could be biological makes it one of the most disturbing finds quietly pushed aside. In May of 2022, NASA's Curiosity rover photographed a small opening in the side of a rocky ridge. The image looked like a rectangular doorway carved into the hillside. Social media exploded with theories about alien tunnels, secret chambers, or ruins. NASA quickly responded, calling it a natural fracture in the rock caused by stress and erosion. But skeptics pointed out the almost perfect shape of the opening. Dimensions were neat and sharp, unlike the random cracks seen in nearby rocks. NASA never released further close-ups of the so-called doorway. Instead, the story faded from headlines within days. For many, this is another example of something bizarre being quickly brushed aside rather than openly investigated. In 2012, the Curiosity rover spotted something glinting in the Martian dirt. The small metallic-looking fragment stood out against the dull red soil. NASA first speculated that it was just a piece of the rover itself that had fallen off, but then Curiosity found more shiny fragments nearby. After some analysis, NASA claimed they were natural Martian rocks with reflective properties. The issue is that the pieces look distinctly different from the surrounding terrain. To make things even stranger, NASA stopped publicizing photos of the objects, stating they were not of scientific interest. This was suspicious. Why would a potential metallic fragment on Mars not be important? That incident left many wondering what exactly the rover stumbled across that day. Since 2011, orbiters have captured images of strange dark streaks running down Martian slopes. These lines, called recurring slope lineae, appear in warm seasons and fade in colder months. At first, NASA NASA scientists proposed they were caused by briny liquid water flowing on the surface. That would have been groundbreaking because liquid water increases the chance of microbial life. But in 2017, NASA reversed its position, saying the streaks might just be dry dust avalanches. The problem is, the explanation doesn't fully match the data. The streaks behave in a way consistent with liquid movement, and some chemical signatures even hinted at salt water. Instead of aggressively investigating, though, NASA pulled back, calling the evidence inconclusive. The idea of flowing Martian water was effectively downplayed.
In 2022, an image taken by Curiosity caught everyone off guard. It showed what looked like a perfectly rectangular doorway carved into a rock face on the side of a ridge. The doorway appeared unnaturally clean. Straight edges, smooth interior. It didn't look like something made by wind or erosion. NASA quickly clarified that the opening was small, only about a foot tall. They said it was likely caused by a natural rock fracture, but the explanation didn't satisfy everyone. The cut looked too clean. The surrounding layers suggested some sort of deliberate shaping. Some geologists said it resembled tectonic shear or collapse from a rock layer splitting, but others pointed out that the area showed no major recent seismic activity. The fact that it resembles an entryway adds to its eerie effect for sure, like it's a little door for aliens. Even if it's natural, it's a perfect example of how alien landscapes can mimic intelligent design. And for those who believe in past civilizations on Mars, the doorway remains one of the most compelling pieces of visual evidence. In 2019, scientists using Earth-based telescopes picked up a mysterious narrowband radio signal coming from the direction of Mars. It was detected by the Breakthrough Listen project, which scans the skies for unusual radio emissions that don't match natural cosmic sources. The signal wasn't like the usual static or cosmic background. It was narrow, focused, and constant for several minutes. At first, they thought it could be interference from satellites or human technology, but checks showed nothing matched the signal's timing or frequency. The discovery wasn't made public immediately. It was analyzed for months before researchers realized their findings. Officially, they say it was most likely some kind of unknown radio frequency interference, but they never found the source. The fact that it appeared to line up with Mars at that moment only added fuel to the fire. While it's not proof of anything extraterrestrial, it's still one of the most unexplained radio detections involving the red planet. High-resolution satellite images of certain Martian regions showed long, translucent, tube-like structures stretching across the landscape. First spotted in the early 2000s by the Mars Global Surveyor, these formations look like giant tunnels with a ribbed structure. NASA refers to them as areniform terrain, or surface channels formed by carbon dioxide gas eruptions beneath the ice, but not everyone agrees. Some independent researchers noticed the tubes seem to run in straight lines and even curve smoothly, which looks unnatural compared to chaotic geological patterns. Conspiracy theories quickly emerged, claiming they might be collapsed transportation tunnels or remnants of an ancient alien habitat. Mainstream scientists remain skeptical, but the real kicker is the reflective quality of these tubes hasn't been fully explained. Their light reflectivity suggests they contain either a smooth surface or something glass-like. Whether they're natural formations or something more mysterious, these tubes are still being actively studied today. In 2014, Curiosity captured a photo of what appeared to be a large skull-shaped rock lying on the Martian surface. The image went viral almost instantly. People claimed they could see eye sockets, a jawline, and even a nose bridge. NASA explained that this was an example of pareidolia, the human brain's tendency to see familiar shapes in random patterns. But some geologists pointed out that the structure didn't match the surrounding rock formations. It seemed denser, smoother, and slightly more polished, even though it's most likely just a weird rock. The discovery reignited questions about whether Mars might preserve fossil-like formations. Mars has wind and erosion, but also the ability to preserve structures for millions of years due to its thin atmosphere. No one has ever proven the skull is anything more than rock, but it remains one of the most
talked about images from the rover archives. In 2019, the InSight lander recorded something unexpected. Mars was shaking. It detected seismic events that were too regular and too consistent to be explained by meteor impacts or wind. These Mars quakes were coming from deep below the surface. Scientists expected Mars to be relatively quiet geologically, but some of the quakes seemed to come from a specific zone, close to a volcanic region. This area has long, deep fissures and may have been active not too long ago in geological terms. What makes it unsettling is some of the quakes have no clear source. They're not tied to impacts or surface stress. They could be caused by underground magma movement or something else happening below that no one fully understands yet. This discovery changed the way scientists see Mars. It's not a dead planet. It's still active in ways that we cannot fully explain. Mars has two tiny moons. Phobos, the larger of the two, is on a decaying orbit, slowly spiraling toward the planet. But what's strange isn't just its orbit, it's the eclipse patterns it creates. When Phobos passes in front of the sun, the shadow it casts moves across the Martian surface at incredible speed. Rovers have recorded these events multiple times, but in some cases, instruments also picked up unusual electromagnetic fluctuations at the same time as the shadows pass. The fluctuations don't match what scientists expected from a simple eclipse. They appear like sudden bursts of localized energy. Some have suggested these are just instrumental anomalies. Others believe Phobos might be interacting with Mars' magnetic patches in a way that we just don't understand. And in an eerie twist, some fringe researchers claim Phobos could be hollow. It's a conspiracy theory with no hard proof, but it was once briefly discussed in serious scientific papers in the 1960s after astronomers noticed the moon's strangely low density. Officially, it's just a captured asteroid, but the odd signals during its transits remains a genuine scientific puzzle. In 2019, something strange showed up in one of the rover's photos. A sudden bright flash of light was captured on the Martian horizon. It was so out of place that at first people thought it had to be a glitch. But this wasn't just a single frame error. NASA's Curiosity rover captured multiple images of a mysterious beam of light shooting upward. Theories exploded overnight. Some said it was a reflection from the rover's camera, others suggested it could be cosmic rays, but here's where it gets even weirder. Scientists reviewed other photos from different times and found similar unexplained flashes, sometimes in completely different areas of the Martian surface. The location didn't have reflective materials, no metallic surfaces, no water to bounce light off of, and the flashes didn't line up with expected cosmic ray interference patterns. Some researchers proposed they could be from underground lightning discharges or natural gas flares, but Mars doesn't have an atmosphere like Earth, so this doesn't really fully add up. Even NASA couldn't give a solid answer. Officially, they called it anomalous light reflection. Unofficially, it's still one of the strangest photographs Curiosity has ever taken. Back in 1976, when Viking 1 orbited Mars, it took an image that shook the world. A massive landform in the region known as Cydonia looked almost exactly like a human face. The photo was released by NASA, and people immediately started speculating. Was this proof of an ancient civilization on Mars? NASA initially said it was just shadows playing tricks on the human brain. But what made it more interesting was that when later missions rephotographed the area with better cameras, the structure was still there. The improved image showed a more eroded, less defined face, but the symmetry of the features remained surprisingly clear. Geologists say it's a natural mesa, but several independent scientists and researchers pointed out that the proportions of the face seem too symmetrical to be pure coincidence. Some even mapped geometric alignments between the face and other nearby formations, suggesting it might have once been an engineered structure. Mainstream science doesn't support that theory, but the face on Mars remains one of the most famous Martian mysteries. It's the moment Mars went from being a boring red rock to a planet that might be hiding some secrets. In 2013, something unexpected happened. The NASA Curiosity rover detected a sudden spike of methane gas in the Martian atmosphere. Methane is important because on Earth, most of it is produced by living living organisms. It can also be produced geologically, but Mars doesn't have the right conditions for that in any known abundance. The spike wasn't small either. It was 10 times higher than usual background levels. A few days later, it disappeared again. This pattern repeated multiple times over the years with seasonal bursts that still don't really make sense. NASA and the European Space Agency tried to coordinate their orbiters and rovers to catch the methane as it appeared. Sometimes they found it, sometimes they didn't. The inconsistency only deepened the mystery. One of the leading theories is that the methane might be coming from underground pockets, possibly trapped for millions of years. But if the methane is being released now, it means something below the surface is still active. Whether that's geological or biological is still unknown. Scientists have admitted that they can't explain where the gas is coming from or why it behaves so strangely. If you stand on Mars, you wouldn't notice it, but the orbiters studying the planet have picked up intense magnetic fields in some areas that don't match the rest of the planet. Unlike Earth, Mars doesn't have a global magnetic field anymore. It lost its planetary shield billions of years ago, but according to data collected by Mars Global Surveyor, some patches of the Martian crust are magnetized dozens of times more strongly than expected. These fields don't align with normal geological formations. The weirdest part is where they're located. Some of the strongest magnetic anomalies are found in areas where scientists also found signs of ancient flowing water. It's led some to speculate that Mars may have once had a magnetic core much more powerful than we thought. Others believe these magnetic patches could be signs of something artificial, perhaps relics of old underground structures or materials. Officially, NASA attributes it to remnants of Mars' ancient dynamo, but the precision and patterning of the fields remains unexplained.
Number 5. Potential sources of energy are low. How will we create energy on the surface of Mars? Well, it's much harder than it is on Earth. Mars is further away from the sun, therefore solar power is only 40% as effective as on Earth and can be even lower in cases of dust storms. Wind power won't be useful as there's almost no atmosphere, and geothermal energy won't work as Mars is much colder than Earth. Now, Elon Musk suggested that we might one day power a Martian civilization with solar panels or geothermal. This is what he said. If you have energy on Mars, you're gonna have water because there's massive amounts of ice. He also hinted at the possibility of terraforming Mars, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere to warm the planet and bring back liquid water, making it habitable for humans. If we could warm Mars up, we would once again have a thick atmosphere and warm oceans, he said. But this seems to be wishful thinking. Number 4. Low gravity can ruin your bones and muscles. This is something you never see in any movies, but the lower gravity on Mars is potentially one of the biggest concerns, says Chris. Here's what he means. We know that humans do fine in Earth's gravity, but on the other hand, we know that human bones and muscles can atrophy terribly in zero gravity, as seen in experiments on the International Space Station. Astronauts on the ISS have to exercise for 2 hours a day to prevent muscle loss, but their bones will still lose calcium over time, and they don't recover until they come back to Earth. What we don't know is how the human body will react on Mars, where gravity is only about 0.38 the strength of Earth. Many people have long assumed that humans can survive just fine in Martian gravity. It'll be just like Earth, only we can jump a little higher. But we don't actually know this is for a fact, Chris says. It might turn out that low Martian gravity is just as bad for human health as zero gravity. Mars's low gravity may also erode other capabilities that are crucial for everyday functioning. For instance, NASA has found that eyesight can mysteriously deteriorate in zero gravity. Astronaut John Phillips went from perfect 20/20 to 2100 after just 6 months aboard the ISS. Astronauts also find it harder to sleep in zero gravity, and many passengers in space suffer from insomnia. The trickiest part is that we won't really know what to expect until we actually send humans to Mars. Number 3. You could get poisoned.
Sand and dirt on Mars is definitely a problem. Mars periodically gets massive sandstorms that spread out across the planet and can last for days or weeks at a time, and let me tell you, you don't want to go outside during one. All of those little particles flying around could tear a hole in your spacesuit, or they could clog door seals, mess up machinery, or even cover up solar panels, depriving astronauts of power for extended periods. A related concern is the fact that Martian soil is toxic. It contains very high concentrations of perchlorates, salts that can do serious damage to the human thyroid gland. It's okay to touch Martian dirt with your bare hands, but you really don't want any of it to get into your drinking water or food when you tramp it into your habitat. You also don't want to grow plants using Martian soil. Now, we're pretty sure there's no life on Mars, no strange microorganisms lurking in the soil, but we're not absolutely sure. So it might be a good idea to test out any proposed landing site in advance in case there's anything harmful lurking. And that worry goes both ways. We'll want to be careful about contaminating or killing any Martian life too. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty forbids the harmful contamination of alien worlds with our earthly microbes. Number 2. You will be stuck with who you go with. One of the greatest challenges NASA is working through in preparation for a Mars mission is making sure crew members don't grow to hate each other. After all, they'll be together for many months on end, far away from their home planet, isolated from their friends, intensely bored, and lacking much personal space. First, researchers have found that there are definitely people out there with the sort of personalities needed for long space missions. Between 2007 and 2011, the Mars 500 project enlisted 6-person crews for various lengths of time to simulate a Mars mission at a facility in Moscow. The final mission, lasting 520 days, went smoothly, no conflicts, everyone got along, which is great, but it was a simulation, and the trouble is that we don't know if psychologists can reliably screen for the right personalities every single time. And it doesn't take much for chaos to arise. For example, during the Biosphere 2 project in 1994, the 7-person crew eventually split into warring factions, and the mission had to end prematurely. Now that's an extreme example, but it underscores the fact that the first crew to Mars will need to get along and keep their feelings under control. Because in this situation, roommate drama could be life or death. And coming in at number 1, help can only reach Mars every 2 years. The biggest challenge to go to Mars is the time duration to go there and come back. The window for a launch to Mars from Earth only happens approximately every 2 years and 2 months. This means astronauts leaving in 2024 would be able to get help before 2026 when the next launch window opens, and the help gets there after the 9-month journey. This time window makes it even harder by creating a mission of a very long duration. So if you somehow run out of supplies or have a huge issue you can't fix, you're just out of luck. Number 10. Your rocket could blow up before leaving Earth. Yep. You heard that right. The trip to Mars is just as hard as being there. Elon Musk's plan to go to Mars involves strapping a giant spaceship atop the biggest rocket that humanity has ever built. Because any rocket launch basically involves a long controlled explosion, no matter how many safety tests are done beforehand, there is always a risk. If anything goes wrong, if the explosion gets out of control, the people trapped in that big container of fuel don't stand a chance. For context, NASA's Space Shuttle program carried 833 passengers between 1981 and 2011. Of those, 14 people died in explosions in 2 high-profile accidents, a fatality rate of 1.6%. That's more dangerous than driving, and it's even a bit riskier than climbing Mount Everest. I don't really think NASA wants us to trust SpaceX, and I don't blame them considering a couple of SpaceX's smaller Falcon 9 rockets have either exploded on the launch pad or blown up mid-flight. Number 9. Radiation exposure. For the entirety of the journey to Mars and back, astronauts are likely to endure much higher exposure to radiation than they would on Earth. Outer space is filled with high-energy particles blasted out by the sun and other stars. Here on Earth, we're protected by our planet's magnetic field, which deflects them away. But once you leave Earth, you'll be exposed. When NASA sent the Curiosity rover to Mars, it found that a one-way trip alone would expose unshielded astronauts an extra 0.3 sieverts gigahertz of radiation, equivalent to 24 CAT scans. To put in perspective, that's 15 times the annual radiation limit for workers at nuclear power plants. Now, what happens if the sun erupts and sends a major solar flare hurtling towards the spaceship mid-flight? In that case, the astronauts could be exposed to much higher, potentially fatal doses, and these flares are unpredictable. Now, this issue just doesn't go away when you get to Mars, oh no. Because the planet has no ozone layer and a weak magnetic field, any humans on the surface would be pelleted with both cosmic and UV rays from the sun at a far higher doses than they get on Earth. Odds are people on Mars would have to spend a good chunk of time indoors, perhaps even underground, shielding their habitat with layers of dirt, and at that point, what would even be the point of being there, you know? Number 8. You could crash on Mars. The hard part of getting to Mars is the landing. Under Elon Musk's plan, your spaceship would be approaching Mars at 62,000 miles per hour. As it descends into the atmosphere, the ship would then use supersonic retro propulsion, aka lots of little rockets firing at once, in order to land on the surface of Mars. This landing maneuver is risky because Mars's atmosphere is much thinner than Earth is, so there's less friction to slow you down. NASA has struggled to even land small robots on the surface. The system used to decelerate and then parachute the Curiosity rover on Mars was mind-boggling. And the Curiosity only weighed 1 ton, and Elon is envisioning 450 tons. Plenty could go wrong. Number 7. Your spacesuit or habitat could leak. Anyone planning a trip to Mars will obviously have to prepare for the fact there aren't ready supplies of food, water, and oxygen. You can pack enough food and water, and humans could invent machines to break apart the carbon dioxide on Mars and yield oxygen, but the real danger is with accidents. A spacesuit or habitat could tear, causing a loss of air. Mars is filled with dust and dirt that's likely to get everywhere. If any of it clogs a crucial seal and causes leaks, people could, well, die. Accidents there could mean life or death, and accidents happen all the time, but you can't afford for them to happen there, which you can't guarantee. Number 6. We can't grow food there. At the moment, astronauts at the International Space Station are not able to grow a sufficient amount of food to sustain themselves, even if some experiments are taking place. Every food they eat comes from Earth in a dehydrated or irradiated form. If a mission to Mars takes place, astronauts won't be able to carry with them the amount of food needed for such a long mission. Therefore, they will need to learn how to grow their own food. If this is already hard in the spaceship, in a microgravity environment, it's even harder on the surface of Mars. Its soil is alkaline and needs decontamination to be used to grow plants, and NASA isn't even sure that that will work. And you kinda need food to live, so this is scary.
While exploring Mars, the Opportunity rover stumbled upon something unexpected. Small spherical concretions, affectionately dubbed blueberries. Composed mainly of hematite, these tiny spheres are not only visually striking, but also scientifically significant. Their formation suggests that liquid water once circulated in the region, precipitating the minerals that eventually coalesced into these perfect little balls. What makes the blueberries so fascinating is the precision of their formation process, which remains partly shrouded in mystery. Were they slowly formed in standing water, or did they result from more dynamic, possibly even episodic, chemical reactions? Their discovery has been a key piece of evidence in the ongoing quest to understand the red planet's climactic evolution, making these small spheres a disproportionately big enigma in Martian geology. Venture near the Martian South Pole and you'll encounter a landscape that looks like it's been etched by alien creatures. Radial channels and patterns resembling spider legs, collectively known as araneoform terrain. These formations arise from the sublimation of carbon dioxide ice during the spring. As the frozen CO2 turns directly into gas, it builds pressure beneath a translucent ice layer until it erupts, carving out intricate branching channels in the process. This dynamic process, unique to Mars, offers a captivating glimpse into the planet's seasonal rhythms. The exact mechanics and variability of these spider formations are still under study, making them one of Mars' most visually arresting and scientifically puzzling phenomena. Their alien appearance and the dramatic natural forces that shape them capture the imagination, challenging our perceptions of what a cold, desolate world can be capable of. When we think of earthquakes, we usually picture the trembling ground on our home planet, but Mars, too, experiences its own kind of seismic activity. Marsquakes. Detected by NASA's InSight lander, these tremors provide a rare window into the interior of the red planet. Marsquakes are less frequent and generally less intense than earthquakes here on Earth, but they pack a significant scientific punch. They help researchers map the Martian interior, revealing details about the planet's crust, mantle, and core. However, the origin of many of these quakes remains elusive. Some might be the result of cooling and contraction of the planet, while others could be linked to volcanic or tectonic activity that we have yet to fully understand. The intermittent nature of these seismic events keeps scientists on their toes, as each new quake adds a piece to the puzzle of Mars' inner workings. In essence, Mars quakes not only shake the surface, they shake up our understanding of the planet's geological past and present. Methane on Earth is often associated with life, and for years, scientists have been intrigued by sporadic methane spikes detected in the Martian atmosphere. These bursts of methane are particularly puzzling because methane is a short-lived gas. Without a constant source, it should quickly break down in Mars' harsh environment. So, where does it come from? Some theories suggest geological processes such as serpentinization, a reaction between certain rock types and water that could be releasing methane. Others have speculated, albeit more controversially, about the possibility of microbial life. The intermittent nature of these methane spikes makes them one of the most tantalizing and debated anomalies on Mars. Ongoing studies using both orbital and surface instruments aim to pinpoint the source of these emissions, but for now, the methane mystery remains one of Mars' most intriguing and potentially groundbreaking mysteries. Stretching over 4,000 kilometers across the Martian surface, Valles Marineris is one of the largest canyons in the solar system, a geological marvel that dwarfs even Earth's Grand Canyon. But beyond its sheer size, this vast chasm holds layered sedimentary deposits that tell a story of a planet in flux. Each layer could represent a different era in Mars' history, from ancient periods when water might have flowed freely to more volatile times marked by volcanic or tectonic upheavals. Some layers reveal irregular patterns that challenge conventional models of sediment deposition, hinting at episodic floods, dramatic climate shifts, or even volcanic ashfalls. These deposits are not only visually striking, they are the keys to unlocking Mars' past environment and assessing its potential for having supported life. As scientists continue to analyze data from orbiters and rovers, this place remains a focal point of research, its mysterious layers urging us to reconsider the dynamic and sometimes unpredictable history of our mysterious red neighbor. In the late 1970s, images taken by the Viking orbiter revealed a curious formation in the Cydonia region that appeared to resemble a human face. This face on Mars has ignited imaginations around the world, with some speculating about ancient Martian civilizations or hidden messages left by extraterrestrials. But is it really a face, or just a trick of light and shadow on a rugged landscape? Later missions, including high-resolution imagery from Mars Global Surveyor, have shown that this face is simply a natural mesa, a hill sculpted by wind and erosion. Despite the overwhelming evidence that it is a geological feature, the mystery still lingers. The enduring allure lies in how our brains are wired to recognize faces even where none exist, a phenomenon called pareidolia. Imagine watching mysterious, dark lines appear on a slope with the change of seasons, lines that might hint at the presence of liquid water. These features, known as reoccurring slope lineae, were first noticed in high-resolution images from orbiting spacecraft. Initially, scientists were excited by the possibility that briny water might be
trickling down Martian hillsides during the warmer months, potentially offering clues about Mars' habitability. However, as more data poured in, alternative explanations emerged. Some researchers now believe that these streaks could be dry, granular flows, movements of sand and dust driven by seasonal temperature changes rather than water. Yet, the debate is far from over. The fine details of the RSL's behavior continue to puzzle experts, keeping alive the tantalizing possibility that Mars might harbor conditions favorable for life, at least in its past, if not today. If you've ever seen a dust devil on Earth, you know that they can be both mesmerizing and unpredictable. On Mars, these phenomena take on an even more epic scale. Towering dust devils, sometimes spanning hundreds of meters in diameter, have been captured by rovers like Spirit and Opportunity. They not only whisk Martian dust around, but they also play a crucial role in cleaning the solar panels of these robotic explorers, an essential survival trick on a planet where every watt counts. Moreover, Martian dust devils can generate powerful vortices that expose hidden layers of rock and dust, revealing the planet's geological history in unexpected ways. Their mysterious origins and immense scale continue to intrigue researchers who wonder how such dynamics operate in Mars' thin atmosphere. These swirling storms offer a vivid reminder that even on a seemingly barren world, natural forces are at work in dramatic, sometimes unpredictable ways. Take a look at a map of Mars and you'll notice a startling contrast. The northern hemisphere is relatively smooth and low-lying, while the southern hemisphere is rugged, heavily cratered, and ancient. This phenomenon, known as hemispherical dichotomy, has left scientists scratching their heads for decades. Why would a planet have such a stark division in its terrain? One prevailing theory suggests that a colossal impact in Mars' distant past could have reworked half of its crust, while another hypothesis points to differences in volcanic activity and mantle dynamics between the two halves. What makes this anomaly so captivating is not only the dramatic visual difference, but also what it implies about Mars' geological evolution. The dichotomy holds clues to the planet's internal processes, its volcanic history, and even its potential to have supported life. As researchers continue to piece together Mars' tumultuous past, this enduring mystery remains one of the planet's most debated and fascinating features. Today, Mars is largely magnetically inert, a stark contrast to Earth's vibrant, protective magnetic field. Yet, scattered across its surface are regions with intense magnetic anomalies, remnants of a time when Mars might have boasted a global magnetic field. These pockets of magnetism, preserved in the crust, offer a glimpse into a bygone era when Mars may have shielded its surface from harmful cosmic radiation. What makes these magnetic stripes so perplexing is their irregular distribution and strength. Unlike Earth, where magnetic reversals have left clear, symmetrical patterns in the ocean floors, Mars' magnetized regions seem patchy and kind of disjointed. This discrepancy has spurred a host of theories, from a giant impact event that disrupted its magnetic field to internal cooling processes that shut down its dynamo. Each hypothesis adds another layer to the mystery of Mars' evolution, leaving us to wonder how a planet once brimming with magnetic energy could become so mysteriously dormant.
Now, as a general rule of thumb, I like to assume that in the realm of conspiracy theories, where there are aliens, there are pyramids. Luckily for you, my geometric-loving friends, Mars is no exception to that rule. In fact, you know that famous Mars face I showed you just moments earlier? In a region of Mars known as the City, well, right next to it, in an area known as the City Square, are what many geologists and scientists believe to be pyramids. Natural or otherwise? Now that's up for debate, but previously mentioned expert Errol Torin believes them to be man-made and incredibly impressive, especially the D&M pyramid, named after NASA imaging scientists Vince DiPietro and Greg Molinar. The D&M pyramid is a 5-sided, 1.5-mile tall structure, making it 3 times the size of the largest pyramid in Egypt. Furthermore, it's actually perfectly symmetrical on 2 separate axes, and it, along with the rest of the pyramids, appear to depict the placement of the Pleiades constellation. Many people believe a similar thing was done in Egypt with the Great Pyramids and the constellation Orion. Now, whether or not these structures and their placements are simply a fluke or if they really were constructed by an ancient civilization living on Mars, you do have to admit they're still incredibly fascinating. Another highly debated formation found on Mars was discovered in May of 2022 by none other than the Curiosity rover. It is the highly controversial Mars Doorway, which is what appears to be an entrance of some sort carved into a rock face. While some people believe the depiction of a secret entrance to be some kind of trick of the light or perhaps an aforementioned pareidolia effect, something about the precision of this supposed entrance has led many to believe that it is so much more than that. Now, here's where the conspiracy theories began to ramp right up. In 1993, after the launch of the Mars Observer probe, and 3 days before it was to be placed into orbit around Mars, a researcher named Richard Hoagland entered into a debate against the lead project scientist at NASA, Dr. Bevan French. Prior to the launch, NASA had wanted to exclude any kind of camera or image capturing device from the probe, but after a massive amount of public uproar, they agreed. But they claimed they still likely wouldn't use the camera and that they definitely wouldn't be taking any photos of the Mars face or the surrounding pyramid-like structures. In response to this, during the debate, Hoagland stated that NASA had a set of data so extraordinary that it demanded testing. Therefore, it would be irresponsible not to capture and provide the public with further images of these structures. The rest of the debate doesn't really matter because just 5 minutes after the interaction between Richard Hoagland and Dr. Bevan French, NASA released a report saying that the Mars Observer probe had disappeared. Kinda like how the moon landing footage disappeared back in 1969. Likely story. Here's the thing though, according to Hoagland, NASA insiders claimed that the observer was actually still out there, running just fine and even taking further photographs of the very structures the public were demanding to see, but that NASA just didn't want to release them. I wonder why. Fast forward to 1998. 5 years after the Mars Observer probe supposedly went missing, NASA launched a new probe, the Mars Global Surveyor, and they even attached cameras to it. Old, outdated cameras, despite having access to ones with much higher resolution. And then, they finally did it. NASA released a follow-up image of the famous face on Mars, a grainy, blurry, distorted image that later came out to be known as the cat box image. Speculation that the photograph had been doctored began almost immediately, and so an image specialist working at NASA decided to go back to the source data and attempt to reproduce the image. It was then that he realized that it had in fact been photoshopped to falsify the appearance of both the face and the formation surrounding the face, but this isn't the only time NASA has been caught falsifying images. For years, NASA has actually been placing orange filters on photos taken of the red planet because they claim it gives the photograph a higher resolution. In reality though, the planet looks a lot more like Earth than one might think. The sky is more blue-gray than orange, and many of the rocks look exactly like ones found on Earth. If the filter really was for resolution, why wouldn't they have released both the altered and original images? Why did they wait for someone else to call them out? And what else are they really hiding?